Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, I'm John, this is Mania True Nerd, and welcome to a very rare review video. I don't normally do reviews, you're very aware. I kind of normally just do, like, walkthroughs and talk about things as they come up, and, like, you know, I look at things not so much as a review, because I find reviews somewhat limiting. But Just Cause 3, I think, deserves a proper, full, dedicated review video. And the reason for that is, I think it's one of the most interesting and discussion-worthy games in terms of, not in terms of the plot, many games are discussion-worthy in terms of the plot, but in terms of the mechanics and the choices that were made during development and how that influences what makes a good game versus what makes a bad game. Now in this video, I'm slightly further ahead than I am in my playthrough. I put about like an extra 10 hours in yesterday because I kind of wanted to feel like I needed to understand this game better before I could properly review it. So I've probably put in 15, 20 hours total at this point. And I think that's enough to get a proper feel for the game. I've pretty much completely cleared out the kind of the both the opening two little small islands at the bottom, and I've also cleared out the first kind of big island, though it's much smaller than kind of the big island above it. So I've kind of probably cleared out somewhere between a third and a half of all of the settlements in the game, something about that. I've found like 4 airports or airstrips and I've liberated 3 of them. So, you know, I've had a chance to play at length with the planes and the helicopters, and I've unlocked my first airport that's got jet fighters and jet bombers. I can't drop in jet fighters or jet bombers just yet, but I do now have an airport where they regularly spawn, so I can go and pick up a jet fighter or a bomber whenever I want to. So I've had a chance to play with some of the advanced military hardware as well. So I feel like now I've kind of got a good enough grip of the game to actually kind of give it kind of a fair review. So let's talk about all the things this game does well, and a lot of things this game does extremely well. As you can see, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's colourful, it's massive, the draw distance is huge, it's incredibly detailed, and you can move around it very, very fast. You'll occasionally notice like a tiny bit of pop-in miles and miles in the distance, but it's still a remarkable technical achievement. Now the core mechanics, the mechanics around which the game is built, blowing things up, physics, tethering things together, hook-shotting about, all of that stuff is beautiful. It works just as they intended. It works incredibly well. So the core solid game mechanic around which everything else is built is solid, works beautifully, is fun to do, with some very, very minor control irritations, like if you accidentally hook-shot yourself underneath something, it's quite fiddly to get yourself back out, and that's kind of the fault of the camera, actually. I'll talk about the camera separately. The camera deserves its own section because the camera is one of the things that doesn't quite work so well in this game. Obviously, no one is really here for the story, but even though they could have basically just skipped the story, quite frankly, and they've done a really good job with the story. The cast is great, the script is sharp, it's very, very fun, and David Tennant as the propaganda minister is hilarious. In fact, he's probably one of the highlights of liberating enemy bases, the fact that David Tennant gets to come on the radio and tell you some feeble excuse for how, you know, they were planning to demolish it anyway. That's all quite good. The upgrading system is also like one of the best I've seen in games in recent years. Basically, you do the little kind of challenge mode, so little kind of self-contained tough challenges like racers, wingsuit courses, shooting galleries, stuff like that. That gives you points with which you can basically upgrade a relevant skill. So do lots of shooting galleries and you can upgrade your guns, for example. But rather than it just being kind of a straight up upgrade, it's an upgrade that you can choose or not to apply, because they do things that you may or may not like. So, for example, you get these kind of little kind of remote bombs straight away, and one of the things that you can get, and this is obviously something that many of you are aware of, because Nerd Cubed showed this off left, and they are hilarious, is you can put little kind of jet boosters on them. So when you trigger the mines, they jet boost for, I think it's about 5 seconds or something, and kind of, you know, and therefore anything that they're on gets thrown about if it's light enough, and then they explode. That's really fun, but you may or may not want that on. If you want to use them as like kind of fun little kind of boost rockets to create fireworks, you'll want them on. But if you just want to blow something up, you want them off, because, you know, if you've attached them to something heavy that you don't want to throw away, then it's just 5 seconds wasted then not exploding. So any point during in the kind of the mods menu, you can turn that on or off. So you can basically, once you've unlocked something, rather than it just being, you know, 20% more powerful, 10% more range or something, the upgrades are more fun, because they don't have to be purely functional, because you can turn them on or off at any time. That's a beautiful system. More games need to do that. That's really, really good fun. Drops are also awesome, by the way, in case you haven't seen this. When you call in a drop, you're basically having a little aid package airdropped on you, where you can pick a vehicle, and that can be, you know, even a massive plane or a ship or whatever. You can drop in, and also you get to drop in like a new selection of guns. So if you're low on ammo, or you just want to change things up for a bit, you can just drop in some new guns and have some fun with them as well. Now that's really good fun. So you can kind of see here, I've just kind of dropped in this here sports car, and because I've done a couple of the land races, I've unlocked a couple of new things for the car. So you can see that this car now has nitros, and it also has a little kind of nitro boost. So it's just hilariously good fun to just go tearing around the countryside, kind of just boosting up narrow roads. I do just kind of make a little game when I'm driving around, trying to leapfrog over things, as I, rather than overtaking them, literally just leapfrogging over the top of them, which I do like quite a lot. That's brilliantly good fun. While I'm talking about the cars, I've really got used to the cars now. They're more difficult to drive than in GTA 5, but I think it's better. They require quite a lot of care and attention, a bit of practice to do well, but I really like the feel of them. They're quite heavy and they drift quite nicely. I love the way the cars feel in this game. Those are absolutely brilliant. And the damage and the destruction physics and effects on the cars are beautiful, way better than in GTA 5. Arguably, I like the fact that in GTA 5 stuff falls off the cars more, and stuff doesn't fall off these cars that much until they're actually destroyed. But I'd say kind of the way they're banged up is a bit nicer. I'd say that's a really beautiful effect. Just everything in this game, the graphics, absolutely kind of faultless. Beautiful, one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen. My only slight irritation with the upgrades, by the way, is you only get like the nitro boost and the nitro jump on cars that have been dropped off you or you've picked up from the rebels. So if you steal a car out in the world, it won't have those nitros on it, which I know technically makes sense because the nitros have been applied by the rebels, so a car you'd steal wouldn't have them. But I kind of thought that this game understood we sacrifice realism to have fun. So like if there was a mod, and I don't know whether this is like one of the later mods down the tree, I haven't looked, but if there's an actual, you know, third person mod that someone invents where once you've unlocked something, it's applied to all vehicles, not just the ones that are dropped off, I'd totally apply that, because I think this game should, you know, sacrifice realism for fun, and for some reason, strangely, when it comes to the cars that you pick up, it doesn't, which I do find a little bit unusual. But now I want to go over to the stuff that's, well, it's not always bad. The interesting thing about this game is, there's nothing I look at in this game and think, somebody made a really bad decision there, or somebody was lazy, or they were just rushing to get this game out so they cut a corner here. Most of the things in this game that are bad have come about out of the best intentions. And Avalanche deserves so much credit for making this game. They have made a fantastically beautiful game, and they've made so many good, earnest decisions. You can tell the effort that comes off this game. It reeks of effort. They have tried so hard to make a brilliant game. There was not a single lazy person who was just willing to phone it in involved in this game. That is beautiful. Despite the fact they've got all of these good things and loads of the core mechanics and all of the window dressing all fits together beautifully, I disagree with Dan when he says this is the best game ever, and I'm going to go over actually various few quite recent games in fact, that I think are better than this game, and I'll explain why as we kind of get to them in detail. What I will say is, I think that what they have here is possibly the best game engine ever. The tools that they've used to make this game, the raw kind of the graphics and the draw distance and the physics within it and the way everything handles and the water and the landscapes and everything, all of that could be possibly the best game engine of all time that they've built for this thing. It is beautiful, and whatever else this team makes with this game engine is spectacularly exciting, and I will definitely play it. But the game that they've made here, Just Cause 3, has some problems with it, and I think the core of it is they spent a lot of time asking what they could do, and nobody seems to have asked the question whether they should do it. They've really pushed this to its limits. They've made everything as big as possible, and that has come with problems. Explosions being massive is awesome, but you can't apply that to everything. And this game is, ironically, the kind of, for such a kind of huge, massive game, the problem with it is, it's actually too big in various ways, and I'm going to go into those a little bit. So the first way that it's too big is that the overworld is too large. The distance between two settlements can be huge and take quite a while to do, even if you've got planes. I'm going to kind of show off two bits here. So what you're kind of seeing here first is I'm just going to go along the side of the first island. So, you know, this is not like the middle of nowhere. This is between the first big town that you discover and then up to one of the first big bases. So this is a route that everyone will basically go on. So you get set the mission to go and take out that kind of big base, and you get sent from this area. So this is a route pretty much every player will go along. So I'm just going to go along here and just explore and see what we find along the way. Because a good open world game, as you go from point to point, you will find interesting stuff. That's what makes the journey interesting. You will find interesting things as you go along. So here we kind of come across this kind of little farmhouse. There's clearly kind of just some buildings here. So if I just nip down over here and have a little loopsy round, we'll discover actually you can't go inside that farmhouse. In fact, you can't go inside any building in this game. I've been playing for about 20 hours. I've yet to see an interior. I can't go through a single door. There just doesn't seem to be an open door option. And to me, that makes the world feel kind of empty. That, like, whenever you just kind of nip down just because you've seen something interesting, there's almost never anything there. It's just a pretty bit of window dressing. It's just a building, but there's not really anything in the way of, like, collectibles that are kind of floating around buildings. Sometimes you'll find secret collectibles, but we'll talk about those in a second. But you can never go inside. There's never just any money lying around. The people on the ground never say anything interesting. They just say they're kind of generic lines. There's a couple of, like, vehicles and stuff that you'll find dotted around these settlements, but they're never good vehicles. They're kind of old vehicles, so, like, you might want to collect them, but once you've grabbed one of them, you'll never want to do it again. So, you know, the first time you find a tractor, you'll totally go and get a helicopter and airlift that tractor back to your garage so you can call that tractor, you know, thereafter, because that's amusing. But you probably, after that point, you'll never summon, well, one, you'll never summon that tractor again, actually, because there's way more awesome stuff to drop in an airdrop. And then two, you'll never need to go to a farm again because you've already got the tractor at that point. Now, as I say, there are secrets dotting about, but the thing is, the world is so big and the range around them, where you get alerted to their existence, is relatively so tiny. There's just no point wandering around trying to find them, because after you clear out an area, they all show up on the map anyway. So it's just not worth it. And by the way, there's too many of them. Like, one of the things that you can do is if you can find, like, parts for a unique weapon dotted around the map, and if you collect all of them, you unlock a new, more powerful weapon. But the thing is, like, I think, like, the one on the first big island, you need to find 18 parts to unlock the weapon, and it shows you what the weapon's going to be. You can find it kind of in the list of weapons that you can call, because it's marked as not unlocked yet, and it looks barely any better than the weapons. Like, it clearly is better than the weapons you've already got. But honestly, like, I can't imagine you ever really feel a difference in combat. And that's what I discovered really quickly in this game. And, like, you'll probably notice a difference in my tone now from when I was, like, playing the game. Because when you're first experiencing the game, it's really exciting and it's awesome. But for me, the welcome wore out. The welcome wore out relatively quickly to some capacity, because the world feels hollow. And once you realise that, like, any building is just going to be a bit of decoration, you're never going to be able to go inside it. And any little settlement, when you drop down, you're never going to find anything good there, to be honest. At that point, the world just starts feeling so empty and hollow. It's beautiful, but there's nothing there. And it's mildly frustrating because they've put all this effort into creating this beautiful world, and it's not worth exploring. It's the absolute opposite of what makes Fallout 4 good. In fact, we don't even need to talk about Fallout 4. We could go back to Fallout 3. Years and years and years ago, Fallout 3 figured out, if you're going to ask me to walk from point A to point B, and it's kind of a big, empty, deserty environment, it just being pretty, or it just being atmospheric isn't good enough. There needs to be stuff en route so that I've got, like, little things to do on the way. Otherwise, it's just a slog. And honestly, I find that's what moving around the map is in Just Cause 3. It is a slog, even with a plane. And I'm just going to show you something else here now. So what you can see here is this is the map of, like, one of the opening islands. And it's not got many settlements on. It's like 4 or 5 or something. So it's supposed to be relatively easy to clear out. If you want to clear it out, however, there's a prison island way down there to the southeast. And if you want to clear out this area, you've got to go and take care of this prison island. So what I've done is I've brought in a plane and I'm going to fly out there now. Now at this point in the game when you're doing this, you probably won't have a plane available to you. You might have a helicopter, but you probably will not have a plane. So this is going to be faster than what you're going to be able to do if you want to clear out this area early. And you'll see there it's several kilometres away and it's coming upon us, but a bit slowly. There's nothing but sea beneath us, so there's nothing really interesting to look at or to do, and it's just, yeah, very slowly coming up on us there. But yeah, I mean, there's a very real possibility you might have to do this in a boat, and God help you if you do, because the boats in this game are pretty slow as well, so it would take, like, I don't know, several minutes, maybe 5 minutes of driving in a boat on seas just to make that. And the sea's very pretty, but that's not good enough to sustain this game for just kind of going through it for 5 minutes. It's a huge problem that this island's just massively out of the way, and I don't even know why this island's so out of the way. They could have just had it closer to the shore. It wouldn't have made any difference. It just feels like they said they wanted the map to be so big, therefore that island has to be way out of the way, when it would have been a better game had they made a smaller, more focused, tighter game where you could more easily get from place to place, and thus there were less areas where there was just nothing to do. So let's move on from the countryside and talk about the towns, because in this game basically you're liberating towns and you're taking over military bases. Now towns are beautiful again, but they suffer from kind of the same problem, which is I've just kind of run into a new town here. So you can kind of see over there, there's a big military statue of the dictator and it's right next to a little cliff down onto the beach, and I've got a helicopter. Wouldn't it be awesome to kind of pull over the statue with the helicopter? Yes, it would. And you'll probably do that maybe once or twice. But if we actually have a look at the map, there's speakers and tanks and whatever. There's like a big collection of things that need to be taken care of in this town, and there's loads of them. And pretty much every town is exactly the same. There's the same sort of stuff in every town. You've always got to clear out the police station. There'll always be a fuel tank in the police station you've got to blow up, and there'll probably be a transformer and a couple of dishes on top of the police station too. And you need to press the button by the gate in order to kind of open up the gate so the rebels can get in, and then you have to fight in the police station for a bit until you're deemed to have taken it over. And then there's going to be like somewhere between 4 and 8 speakers per town. They've all got to be pulled down or blown up, and it just becomes a chore. There must be like about 50 towns in this game, and all of them are functionally identical. They've all got a statue, they've all got a few speakers and some billboards and some connected monitoring posts and some dishes and fuel tanks and transformers and 2 gate switches. And when you've got that many things, and they're pretty much all in the same town, you just get into a routine. You stop doing it awesome because there's too much stuff to do it awesomely. If to take over a town, it was just destroy the statue, but the statue was incredibly well guarded or something and took a huge amount of firepower to take down because it was reinforced or something, I don't know. Then you'd probably want to do it in a really awesome way each time. But you don't, because there's just too much to do. It's an example of a game being bigger, not making it better. The fact that you've got, like, it's almost like you arrive in a new town and you just check your shopping list. And sometimes you've got as many as 30 little individual things to destroy in that town. At that point, it's not fun for me. I just go and get a gunship and just kind of shoot it all with a gunship. And that's actually what I did when I cleared out, like, the south coast of the top island. I basically just went and got a gunship and I just kind of swept across the coast, just gunning it all down with a gunship, because very often you can kind of get away long before enemies actually send air reinforcements against you. Just because... that's the thing. The game wants you to do things in a really awesome, badass fashion, but it can't ask you to do that 30 times a town when there's 50 towns. There's no mini-map, by the way, so the flow also gets broken up quite a lot because you have to open up the map screen to find the last couple of items, so it's really easy to miss a couple of them, like the odd billboard, because the billboards hang around at the very edge of town, often by the roads that lead into town. I mean, I like the fact that things are laid out in a sensible fashion, like the billboards are laid out at the entrances and exits of town, so you'll always pass them whenever you leave and enter the town. But it doesn't change the fact you will miss a couple of things, and you'll just need to interrupt the flow in order to go into the minimap to actually find the thing. Now that's all a huge shame, because someone's put a huge amount of effort into these towns. If you go from town to town, they've all been designed differently. Someone's put a huge amount of effort. Like, there's one really beautiful town where there's like a big ruined monastery kind of towering over it, and there's beautiful seaside towns with kind of really nice docks. Someone's put a huge amount of effort making sure each town looks unique, but the stuff that's been shoved down for you to do in each town is identical, so you don't notice all the kind of the effort. You don't kind of enjoy exploring a new town because you're basically just here to clear out a routine. If there were less towns or less stuff to do in them, or both ideally, I think you'd appreciate each town more, but you just don't. And in that way, Just Cause 3, this mistake it's made, means that I enjoyed clearing out settlements in Just Cause 3 a lot less than I did kind of clearing out settlements in Far Cry 4. So in Far Cry 4, the settlements were varied, and the variety in the settlements changed the tactics that you used, the angle of approach, the angle that you scouted things out, the way that you handled things. Whereas in Just Cause 3, as I say, I've cleared out probably maybe a third of all the settlements in the game, and pretty much, you can do all of them identically. In fact, it's fastest and most efficient to do all of them the same, just easy, most comfortable way that you're happy with. And that's a bit of a shame. That really goes against the ethos of Just Cause 3, that it ought to be about, you know, badass explosions, playing around, toying with the physics. But if you want to clear out a province, and there's 4 towns in the province, and the 4 towns are basically functioning identical, pose no real challenge to you, and are all going to have the same things in them, you're obviously going to do the easy thing and just go through the motions with them. There's a lot of repetition in this game, by the way. So much repetition. You just have to do the same things over and over and over again. It's really a problem. It becomes a grind. It genuinely... I got that, like, sensation. I really started to feel the grind after not very long. After 10 hours with this game, I really felt like when I wanted to take over a new area, it's just like, okay, fine, 2 more towns to take out. I guess I'll just go in with a gunship. Yep, shoot. Right, cleared. Right, where's the next one? Put it on the map. Okay, go in, shoot. Right, check my mini-map. Okay, where's the thing I've missed? Okay, I'll go over there and shoot that then. It's so against what Just Cause 3 ought to be like. It's baffling. And even once you've taken them over, the towns then you'll never visit them again because there's nothing good in the town. There's no real collectibles, there's no shops or anything because all your supplies are handled through airdrops. But taking over towns is even more pointless when you're in a situation where once you've taken them over, you know you'll never be back. There's no point doing it carefully or doing it kind of sneakily or doing it in a badass awesome fashion because you know once you've cleared out this town, you'll be down the road to the next one and you'll never come back to it again. So to my mind, that's the countryside is too big and empty, and the towns primarily are just ghost towns that become part of grind. And that leaves the military bases. The military bases are the highlight of the game, easily. One thing I will criticise about military bases is sometimes they're so crowded that the pieces stop fitting together very well. So like there's a helicopter over here, so you just think, okay, there's loads of stuff to destroy. Wouldn't it be awesome if I got in a helicopter and used that to kind of, you know, use the minigun to kind of shoot down a bunch of stuff. But of course, the moment you take off, the surface-to-air missiles destroy you. Now, you can hack those, but the problem is surface-to-air missiles don't show up on your map, and when you're travelling around, they don't glow in red. They don't have a little kind of glowy red light on the top of them. They start glowing red after you take off, but not before. And this game kind of trains you to look for glowy red lights. You look for the thing with a glowy red light on the top, and you shoot that. And it works beautifully. The colour coding in this game is great, so you always can know if it's wearing a red hat, or it's red in any way, it's an enemy needs to be shot. If it's wearing blue clothing, it's a rebel and should be supported. If it's got a little glowy red light on it, that's a thing you need to destroy because that's a bit of infrastructure that needs to go down. All the colour coding is fine. It's very good at signalling to you at a glance what's friend, what's enemy, and what needs to be destroyed. But the surface-to-air missiles don't have the glowy red light on them until you've already taken off and are being blown out of the sky, which is really annoying. I'm not a mod person, but if someone created a mod where the surface-to-air missiles also had the flashy red light on them when you haven't taken them over yet, and then they have a flashy blue light on them permanently after you've hacked them, I would install that in a second, because that's so frustrating, the fact you think you've got all the surface-to-air missiles, then you take off, and oh, then and only then do they flash up that there's actually one there. And that's really annoying. It's so annoying, it really is. I mean, it's really good fun to, once you've hacked them, and they start shooting down all the enemy air reinforcements, that's really good fun, but it's just very frustrating that, like, there might be one helicopter in the base, and you take it off, and it immediately gets blown up through no fault of your own, because the bases can be really huge, and if there's just one surface-to-air missile that was just hidden around the back, that didn't show up on your map, and you didn't see because it wasn't highlighted to you, then it just immediately destroys the helicopter, and taking out the rest of the base is much slower as a consequence. Though I will also say about the bases, the thing about them is you kind of have to deliberately stop yourself from abusing the game, because the game can be made incredibly easy, because if you die, you respawn immediately outside of the area you were just trying to take over, but all the alerts have been cancelled and you'll have received a free top-up for all your ammo. So there's actually nothing to stop if you wanted to take over an area. Just kind of run in, get out your biggest rocket launcher, fire all your rockets at a thing you want to die, and then just stand there and accept suicide, respawn 10 feet behind you. Now you've got all your missiles and rockets back, walk in, rocket the next thing, and you could just do that, and you could basically win the entire game just doing that. And there's nothing to stop it, because death has no penalty, there's no XP or scrap or gear or whatever penalty, because there's no currency. It kind of it takes away from you for being destroyed. And if you destroy something then die, it stays destroyed. I don't think that happens in the main story missions. In the main story missions, you do have to do it in one go. But, you know, I think the core of the game isn't really the story missions. It's just kind of the messing around, blowing stuff up in the overworld. So you kind of have to deliberately stop yourself abusing the game, because it's really abusable. There's, like, just doing kind of simple suicide runs is a perfectly viable tactic. I only found myself doing that once. There was one really annoying cave military base where I just kind of got swamped, and every time I stepped inside it, I was just kind of, you know, down to almost 0 health and being killed almost immediately. There was just too much stuff, so I just started abusing it. I guess maybe it's nice as a failsafe, where if you get stuck in an area where there's just too much kind of heat floating around, there are ways around it, but I'd recommend kind of not doing it. I think it's a bit of a weakness of the game that it is that abusable. Probably part of the problem is, unlike, say, Far Cry 4, rather than killing everyone present to take out a settlement, the game wants you to destroy all the destructible things. So if you destroy all the destructible things, but there's still like 100 people and 50 enemy gunships in the base shooting at you when you destroy the last thing, they all just disappear and the base is yours, which is kind of weird, because it does kind of encourage you to just kind of, you know, run screaming and tossing all your grenades at the last destructible thing in the base and completely ignoring the enemies. But I guess that means the game can just keep tossing in reinforcements, whereas if it was take out everyone, then you'd have to kill the enemies. I guess probably it's for the better, but it's a little bit weird because it just makes it too easy to abuse, and I don't know if maybe they'll try and fix that at some point. What's good about the bases, however, is it's a really good blend of rewarding you for being really good with controls and the core mechanics of zippy, fly, explodey, but also it does reward strategy. So if you want to kind of sneak around and hack all the SAM sites early, and, you know, kind of cracking open all the gates so the rebels will come in and reinforce you much more easily, you can do that. It's not quite as sophisticated as it is in plenty of, like, Ubisoft games where you can, like, take out the guys who are going to call reinforcements in advance, and just my personal preference, I prefer that system over this system. But you can kind of, you know, lay out the battlefield slightly in your favour first, which is cool. But yeah, I like the fact that you can take a more strategic approach or an all-guns blazing approach, and both of them work really, really well. There's a bit of flexibility there, so it's not just freedom in terms of, like, zipping around and destroying stuff. There's a bit of freedom in terms of your tactics as well. But that really only comes across in the military bases. There's a couple of other small problems, but none of them are really big at this point. The guns are honestly a little bit underwhelming. They're just kind of basically guns, and the extra special secret guns you unlock are barely any better. There's a handful of really interesting guns, but you can't really unlock those by kind of doing extra stuff in the game. They're kind of mission locked. There's just none of the creativity of the guns that's in Red Faction Guerrilla, and as far as I can tell, there's not really much of like an upgrade system per gun. You unlock kind of improvements for all your guns through doing kind of various weapon related extra subquests, but as far as I can tell, like, you can't really upgrade or personalize the guns much, so they feel a little bit underwhelming. And the guns you get really early on do the job perfectly well, so for the most part there's not much point unlocking the extra guns, which is a shame. The camera and the map and the mini-map and all of that stuff are all a bit of a mess, by the way. The field of view is really limited. Even if you know a helicopter's coming in, it's really difficult to figure out where it is. You sit on the spot just kind of spinning, trying to find it, and very often you won't find it until it's already firing on you, because there's no mini-maps, you can't see where it is, and the game doesn't flag it to you with a little kind of warning or anything. The only time you get a warning is you get told which direction you're taking damage from, so you often won't realise the helicopter's even there until a minigun is already hitting you, at which point you can be dead pretty quickly if you already happen to have been injured, which is kind of annoying. And swimming in this game is really weird. I've actually gone around swimming in it and I can barely figure out how it works. Like, if you fall into the water and you want to swim up to the surface, you have to pull down on the right stick to look up, and then push up on the left stick to indicate you want to go forward, and then hammer A to actually swim. It's a really weird basic thing this game does incredibly wrong. Like, you know, you just expect in a modern game today just be able to jump into the water and start swimming and it broadly to make sense. They've come up with this really weird system that doesn't really make much sense, and it's, yeah, horrible. I really think that could do with being modded, because that is... I just don't understand how you mess up swimming. It's a thing that 3D games have pretty much standardised for 10 years. Yeah, apparently this game just decided it's going to make up this wacky new system. Maybe it was in Just Cause 2, I don't know. But it's just a really bad system for swimming. It makes swimming awful, and I think that needs to be fixed. Overall, I think there's one thing this game kind of teaches us, and what Just Cause 3 teaches us is there is too much of a good thing. It's the same problem that Saints Row 4 ran into in some ways. Which is, Saints Row 4 gave you superpowers so early into the game, you were flying and running at super speed, that all of a sudden, cars were redundant and you had no reason to hang around in the world, which was a really nicely designed, beautiful world. And Just Cause 3 has done the exact same thing. When we've got the awesome ability to drop jets in whenever we need them, though I can see why on paper that sounds like a really awesome and good idea and highly convenient, the moment you do that, you're just going to drop a jet in every time. There's no point driving around the world, which is a shame because the cars are really fun to drive and the upgrades for the cars with the nitros and the jumps are really, really good fun. And the world is fun to drive around. The physics feels nice, the cars handle well, the world is beautiful and it's nice to drive around it, and it's really fun to just kind of, you know, nudge other cars off the road, nudge other cars off the sides of bridges, just occasionally hop out of your car in order to hookshot like a motorcycle onto the back of your car and drag them around for a bit. But you don't do any of that because when you've got a jet, you're always going to take the jet, and you're always going to take the jet because the world is so big you're never going to drive anywhere. The game, through being too big and having a too convenient drop system, has rendered one of its most fun things to do, driving around in a super nitro car, something you will never ever do. You might do it like once at the beginning of the game, but I promise you, as soon as you get like helicopters on tap, when you're playing this game, you will never drive anywhere, which is such a shame because it's taken what is actually one of the most fun things to do in this game and made it one of the things you will never do because it's just not convenient in a world this big to do it. Kind of as I said at the beginning, Just Cause 3 has a really, really great game engine. And the most fun I had with the game was when I was completely ignoring not just actually the story, but I was completely ignoring the bases and the towns too. The game it's most like, other than of course Just Cause 2, is Red Faction Guerrilla, but it's got a much less focused world. It's become a weaker game from being much, much bigger. The thing is, it's so big, but it just feels empty because it doesn't have anything in that world that's interesting to explore. This is what Fallout 4 gets that Just Cause doesn't. The little tiny military settlements are completely pointless. Towns are pointless. Majority of bases, though they're fun to take over, once they've been taken over, are pointless. You're conquering the world, but there's no point in really conquering it because it's not worth owning. The only reason you do everything in Just Cause 3 is just slowly take a map that starts off red and slowly make it more and more blue. And that to me feels a bit hollow. But then every time I feel bad about the game, occasionally it just absolutely sparkles with this huge inventive military base that's got some really fun stuff in it. Like, it's laid out one of those big spherical fuel tanks right next to kind of a bunch of big fuel towers, and you can't help but kind of take out the supports and try and kind of play bowling with it, and it's incredibly awesome. Or there's those huge vigilator bases, kind of the huge vertical ones. Those are absolutely, utterly spectacular. Really good fun because they've been well designed to match the upgrades that you've got with the hookshot. They work beautifully well together. Or you'll just see a vehicle that you want and you'll bring a helicopter to an odd farm and you'll lash a vehicle to a helicopter and you'll airlift it carefully back to your garage to add it to your collection. Or you'll have an insanely awesome moment when you're taking over a town or a military base and you'll be zipping through fire with a wingsuit and you'll pull out a parachute and you'll take a mid-air shot with a rocket launcher that secures the enemy base. Or you'll be actually wandering around on the back of a jet in flight, just admiring the scenery, taking the odd pot shot at a bridge, and you'll occasionally just spot the odd island you want to go and have an explore of, so you'll hop off your jet and you just zip down to it and you'll just see what's there, and you might find something and you might not. And those moments are wonderful. They're some of the best moments I've had in gaming this year, but they make up about 5% of the playtime if you're lucky. 95% of this game is spent just travelling from point A to point B in an uninteresting, albeit very beautiful, but still uninteresting environment, and doing repetitive tasks just to make a red thing slowly go blue. Regardless, I do recommend this game because this is a big, long game. This reminds me of those days back when you were willing to expect that a AAA game to complete was going to take, you know, 60, 100, maybe more hours to do. There is a lot of entertainment to be had in here. Even if it is only 5-10% of the game that's awesome, that's still reasonable. And those fun moments, when it is good, it's brilliant. In that 5% of the time, I see a game and I understand why Dan called this the best game ever. I understand it in that 5% of the time. But I can't overlook the 95% of the time when I'm not. And sometimes during that 95% of the time, I felt actively bored. And that is something that a Just Cause game should not be. Overall, whether you're going to like this game depends entirely on your love of a massive, stupid sandbox and how much fun you can make for yourself with it. If you can make your own fun with a big, really, really pretty, incredibly well put together, gorgeous physics engine, you will love this. You will love it so much. But if you prefer a game to be more structured and more focused and have a bit more strategy and a bit less wacky, explodey runabouty, and honestly, I think that's my preference, I suspect you might get bored of the grind long before this game is over. But you'll still have plenty of fun along the way. So there you are, ladies and gentlemen. That is why I wanted to review this game, because I think this is a really fascinating game where, yeah, overall what they've done is they've created, with a spectacular game engine, a really spectacular game, but through their own best intentions of wanting to make it as big as possible, they've ended up with something that's spread so thin that most of the time it's just not as awesome as it should be. If they just shrunk the map significantly, put all the bases closer together, and then just put some interesting stuff on the roads between them, I think you'd pretty much have created a nearly perfect game at that point. They came so close to a spectacularly great game, but instead, just through these little missteps, all adding up, and all of them made with the best of intentions, they've simply created a good one. I don't know, let me know if you enjoy me doing reviews like this and actually doing like proper talky reviews. It's very rare for me to do post-commentary stuff, so I kind of recorded this footage and then I kind of needed to record the audio separately. But in the meantime, I've been John, this has been Many a True Nerd, and this has been my review of Just Cause 3. Thank you very much, and goodbye. Just got to weaken the base of this a little bit more. Yes! Yes! Good news, I'm protecting you! Alex Mason, the man who can literally run as fast as a speeding truck. This game is basically just badasses don't look at explosions the game, isn't it? Oh!